Howdy, 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 everyone. I've been trying to start these a little bit earlier, but I've been out during the day and then running around. I try to do a walk around the different streets in the community. So um, basically, I don't always. Let's just say I haven't got down to the point of having an exact time every time. So haven't quite got there yet. So okay, so the definition of tonight is um, the difference between a truth and a lie. So, well, I've kind of been running my mouth online. I'd say since I probably actually before I got out of the military, I was actually one of my many jobs as an officer was to engage the family back home. So you write a letter for the family readiness group. So it wasn't like this, but I did a lot of writing sitting back home. I engaged with reporters. I wrote up a lot of our official government reports, and I did a lot of archiving for my unit. So um, I actually got a lot of my original writing from there. So what I found out through all these different interactions and engagements is that um, what you do here, um, what you do here when you're sharing things is you'll always be evaluated. Now, I named this the difference between a truth and a lie is that one requires your participation. And what I mean by that is the truth stands regardless, no matter who says it, no matter who presents it. If it's the truth, it might not happen as soon as you want it to, but it will happen. Getting set up here. So no matter it might not happen as soon as you want it to, but it will happen. The idea of justice might not come in the time frame that you want it to, but it has a long arc. It will work its way back. So recently, been getting more and more engaged through society, through what we have going on, and through public discourse, you meet a lot of different types of individuals. So I was actually sitting with a friend of mine. He's a pastor of a church, actually earlier this evening, and I was sharing with him a story about a couple weeks ago where I was engaging. Actually, hold on. Can you guys even hear me? Hello, hello. That's probably make this a little easier. So, apologize for that. I forgot I have a microphone. So, just to cover it, this is called difference between a truth and a lie. The idea being difference between a truth and a lie is that one requires your participation. So, what I was covering here was the idea that talking about where that notion comes from. A truth versus a lie. The separation between the two is the fact that even if you don't support the truth, let's keep it very simple. Even if you don't support the truth, and the truth is 2 + 2 = 4. You don't have to support that to still exist. Okay, you don't have to support it to still exist. Lies, on the other hand, they require participation. Let's take one you hear in the community: black on black crime. That is a lie, which is why it has to be said over and over again. Because if the people stop saying it, it goes away. There will be no scientists who discover this black on black crime phenomenon. They won't discover it. You're seeing information that's put out right now in the public that if people don't keep repeating it over and over again, it doesn't come out. That's the difference between the truth and a lie. One requires your participation to exist. So How do you connect this to your life, to your community, to your world? Well, I'll talk to you about how I connect it. So when I decided to go put myself in this public environment, in this public light, I I before I even walk out my front door, I tell myself that first off, it's dangerous business walking outside your front door. It's actually takes a lot of courage to go out into the world and engage it, because the world is not nice to any of us if you think about it. It kind of actively works against you. Um, Even though there's extremely varying degrees, I don't think that the world is just literally handed to anyone. It might be hard if right now you're like trying to figure out how you're going to pay the rent. It might be hard to hear this, but I argue that even some guy who just inherited this big company from his father and all these bank accounts, and his father passed away, so he's inherited it. The world is still not just going to hand itself to him, because he now has this pressure of living up to his father's expectations or living in the shadow of his father. You know, I'm not going to speak for any individual exactly. So actually, I won't use an exact name, but imagine if your father was a big basketball star, like one of the greatest ever. Okay. And imagine you are pretty good, like very good at basketball, but your father was in the top 10. Let's say that. Imagine your father was in the top 10. How do you how do you reconcile that? There's actual studies about people getting a silver medal at the Olympics, how they're actually the saddest person on the podium. The person who got the third place, they're just happy to be there. I'm on the stage. Um, the person who got the gold, naturally, they're super ecstatic. But you would think the person who got third place would actually be the saddest person. But they talk about the effect of people who win silver medals, how they go the rest of their life, like, I was so close. I was just that one podium away. And you go and look at, sometimes you'll find pictures of people who won second place. And the person, again, with the third place, they're smiling. Person with the gold, of course, is like, oh my God. And then the person with the silver is kind of like hanging their heads down. They feel this utmost defeat of being so close, but being so far away. So I give those two examples with, the Olympian who wins a silver medal or someone who inherits the company, not for you to feel bad for famous people or rich people, because for the record, winning a silver medal or even a gold medal doesn't automatically make you rich. So I say that to come back to you. How do you go through your day? You are not perfect, but you don't need to be a human. As a Christian, especially, and don't get me wrong, I am not about to start about talking about how Christians get persecuted. I have never been persecuted as a Christian. There are actually Christians in Nigeria right now who are truly facing persecution. That is an absolute real thing. I'm only bringing it up to say that I will have individuals every now and then, it's very rare, but someone will come to me and say, hey, I hear you're a Christian, and they'll give me their opinion on how that's not the thing I should be. Let's just keep it simple. When people accuse you of things, you decide through your participation how real they are, whether they're real. I was talking a couple days ago, actually, where I make the joke that if I'm interviewing people for a job and a guy comes in and he goes, before he even says his name, I don't do drugs. My attitude is, I think you probably maybe do drugs. The fact that you had to put it out there, that probably means it's the opposite. So at the same time, maybe there is something you've done. And you're like, oh my God, because I'm not perfect, I can't go out in the world. I argue that it's not about perfection. It's about it's about transparency. I think that's a better word. So I go out into the public eye to have these conversations. Again, I don't have a national podcast or anything like that, but Kenosha's not that big. So people watch the podcast and they like the ideas that you share. So I try to be very even, but if you're a person on very extreme sides, interacting with me is not normally a good day for you. And I say very extreme sides. If you are a far leftist that thinks all property should be confiscated and all the rich people should be eaten, like you truly believe that, um, I'm going to engage you with my way to where you're not going to enjoy talking to me. Um, I have that ability to where someone says, "Oh, you were in the military?" Well, you guys are imperialists. You were an imperialist for the US government. You should not be proud that you were in the military. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. You guys are horrible. You give me 15 minutes talking with that guy and he wants to fight. He forgot he was a pacifist. And he forgot he was a pacifist because he never was a pacifist. If you have to tell me you're a pacifist, you're probably not a pacifist. On the flip side, I have a lot of individuals that engage me on the far right where they start talking that I hate Colin Kaepernick because he disrespected the American flag and he is not a patriot and I'm a patriot and I believe in gun laws and I believe in America. If you got to do all that talking, you're not a patriot. You are afraid every day of your life. And you're hoping that if you project all this attention on the Colin Kaepernick, we won't notice who you are. You don't have to agree with Colin Kaepernick to realize, honestly, there's nothing cowardly about what he did. You'll hear people tell the lie that he knew he was on his way out. He knew that he was no good. And that is why he did this whole kneeling thing just for the money. They have to keep saying that because there's no evidence to support it. Yes, they might take these kernels of truth, but they have to run with it. They have to. You look at the recent events here in Kenosha. You see people that keep saying over and over every day how our mass shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse, is completely innocent and it's self-defense. I urge you to stop fighting these people. If you're fighting them, if you're going back and forth with them, stop fighting them. If it's true, then that's what it will be. They know it's not true. They're hoping if they say it enough times that it will kind of magically become true. That's really what they're doing. As foolish as this is, because these are usually grown, well, of age, they're of chronological grown age men. But it's like, if I just keep saying this kid is innocent, then I'll wake up one day and he'll be innocent. I saw some of them were so desperate that I saw that when the defense attorney put out the defense attorney's version of events, they were sharing the defense attorney's version of events and saying, bam, there it is, proof. That actually I found highly amazing. Imagine if we lived in a world where so long as the defense attorney says it, then it must be true. I think everybody would find the money to get a defense attorney in that case. So coming back to these extremes that I engage with here in Kenosha, most of the people who follow me are center, left of center on social items. If I had to type all of you that follow me or write or interact with me on Facebook, through social media, through YouTube, the majority of you overwhelmingly are center, maybe left of center on social and human issues, but right of center on business and economics. That's usually how you could identify, and that's a big generalization of people who interact with me. As far as the thinking space, a common thread that you could observe in all of you is that you kind of like the mental finger puzzles that I give you. For the most part, you're individuals that you're not looking for someone to tell you what to think. You're kind of interested, or you have an affinity for people or interactions that kind of challenge your thinking. Some of you have even said that to me. You're like, you know what? I don't know if Ray has an actual position. I think Ray's position is whatever my position is to tell me that I should think about my position. Or whatever my position is, Ray is the opposite. And I say yes. Not because I want to be against you, but I think a lot of the problems that we have here in society is we don't vet ourselves. We don't challenge ourselves in what we're talking about and what we're thinking. So I talk about how people are unreliable. So at my job is to build, what if things hit the fan systems? Okay. I'm always that guy in the room. My nickname is Rain Cloud. I'm always like, okay, this could go wrong. This could go like this. So let's prepare in case this happens. The reason for that is those unlikely events. Yes, they're unlikely, but when they happen, they kind of derail a lot of things. So you want to mitigate. Think of being the mayor of a town and the town is in a floodplain. You don't know what years it's going to flood. Let's say it happens every 50 to 70 years. Let's say that. You don't know when the town is going to flood. People aren't expecting you to know the future. They're expecting you that, given what you know, account for what's possible. So if you're the mayor of the town, they're not expecting you to know when the flood's going to come. They're not literally thinking you're a diviner. But you could get a map of the city, of the low elevation areas, and make sure that they always have on standby sandbags or contingency plans in the low-lying areas. That's something that you could do as the mayor. So that's a way of mitigating possible futures. So when I got out of the military, I didn't know quite what I wanted to do. But I knew that I didn't want to be looking over my shoulder the rest of my life. And by that, I mean, I didn't want to be looking over my shoulder like, okay, something that happened in the past, people are thinking that I hit it. Again, the job that I did in the Army, I wasn't planting flowers. Okay. So I didn't want to just forget about that. And someone comes up one day and says, well, look what you did in the military. You hid that from us. So while I was trying to find myself coming back, I made a decision that I'm going to be out there completely transparent. So one of the first things, I lucked out actually. So I didn't plan it, but I lucked out and it came and it happened and I took advantage of it. One of the first things that happened when I came home, there was a initiative of finding local veterans and writing their stories, writing their book. So I was fortunate enough to get selected for this when I came home. And I got to work with people who know how to write books, and I got to write a book. So what I chose to write about was my last year and a half in the military. I'd say my last year in the military. And I wrote about it and a voicing and a framing that what for people who read it, they'd come back and they would say, I don't know what to think. And I would respond, now you know how I feel. I was there and that's how I feel. I remember one lady, she said, I got vertigo. And I said, now you know what combat feels like. My entire premise of the book was in infantry school, you're taught that a mission has one task and one purpose. And if you try to have more than one task or more than one purpose, you're going to fail. So while it's about my last year in the military, it's also about me trying to do two things, having two tasks and two purposes. One being this high-speed officer in a special forces unit, trying to build my career, and the other trying to maintain, keep afloat, build up a very early and strained marriage. And I start off the book talking about that. And whether the book ends is me showing you this is what happens when you try to have more than one task and more than one purpose. This is what happens. I ended up leaving as in my opinion, a mediocre officer. I did not become a 7-star general. A mediocre Army career and a failed marriage. That was the result of me trying to multitask. That was the result of me trying to violate the basic only rule that they teach you in combat. One task, one purpose. When your mind is separated, these are the results. I was worse than Icarus. I was trying to fly towards two suns. One wasn't enough. So get home in 2010, write the book around 2011, 2012, I want to say. So, yeah, if you're halfway interested, yeah, you can go find it out there on Amazon, Objects for Deployment. Or if you don't want to buy it, just hit me up on the side. I don't care. I'll send you the PDF version of it. It's fast. It's about 100 pages. I tried to be as honest about it as I could be. And actually what I used to do, I don't really scout for new business partners these days. But when I first started coming home and people were like, hey, I want to work with you, I want to do business with you, my idea was I didn't know much about the civilian world. I didn't know what civilians were like. I didn't know what they were expecting or wanting. And I did not want to, again, be looking over my shoulder my whole life. So I required people who wanted to do business with me, I required them to read the book. I said, I want you to know who you're doing business with, what kind of man I am. I don't look down on anyone who's like, I don't want to do business with a person who did that kind of job. I don't care if it's legal. I don't care if you are taking orders. I don't want to live life with a person like that. I don't want to do business with a person like that. I wanted to give people the freedom or the respect to have all the information that, or as much information, material facts about me as possible. So moving forward, they know who they were dealing with. I did that every time, expecting someone to say, yeah, no offense, but I don't want to move forward with you. To this day, I am still shocked that that never happened. So just to dig into that, I'm not going to say I was ashamed. I carried a certain guilt with the job that I did. And I carried a certain guilt about what I feel that doing something for an extended period of time makes you. I often talk about the fact that if you spend your whole life chasing monsters, it's kind of hard not to start resembling their characteristics. And so if you're running around, sleeping and breathing, chasing people who do bad things to people, let's just say you start that job thinking a certain way and you walk out of that job um, justifying a lot of things to do that. So how silly is that? So yeah, I was the parent who would hit a kid and say, "Don't hit." That's a good way to say it. Um, so move forward, figuring out my life, and you move forward and find you find your place in this world. Let's just say I'm a lot more domesticated now than I was in the past. So um, remarried, have a great woman. Um, I wouldn't wish divorce on anyone, not even my worst enemy. But it ended up great. There was a happy ending. We're not done, but let's just say my life has become a thing that I definitely did not deserve. Um, I'm out there. I'm very vocal. So some of you, if you've met my wife, you've met her. Um, but let's just say she's not going to be doing any podcasts anytime soon. But um, she's definitely uh, she's honestly something that I truly believe did not exist. Again, coming back to you look at my life in the military and that time that I had, I I really just thought that there is not someone for me. I used to joke about that. I was like, you know what? After my divorce, I was like, I think I'm just gonna be that guy who has 5 and 6 marriages, or I'm gonna be that 60-year-old dude in the nightclub, pretending that he's not 60. I really resigned myself to that fate. So the fact that I'm now, you know, who I am today, I did not see that coming. So let's just say that. Definitely did not see that coming. You know, being married to a college professor and chief information officer, a corporate woman, has her own stuff, did her own thing, you know, it was definitely not my plan or is not how I thought things were going to be. So much for making plans. So here I am now. I am engaging, talking in public, saying a lot of hard truths, and I'm saying a lot of hard opinions too. So let me not pretend that I am some coming messiah and everything that I say is gold and word and bond. I do work very hard to try to articulate between what's a fact and what's an opinion when I'm speaking. When I'm expressing opinions, I try to support them with evidence. It's a discipline. It's not something you can ever wholly achieve as a human being. It's definitely a discipline. It's something that you have to really get engaged into. So coming back to moving forward in life. So I have this network of people around me, my wife, my friends, my business partners. They know me. For people who follow me long enough on Facebook, you might not, I hope you realize it, but you actually know my life. I mean, you could stitch together all the videos and pictures and conversations. That's it. I mean, that's my life. I think the only thing, it depends if you're a newer person. So if you're a newer person, maybe you don't know about how back in the day I used to be very much in the music, like me playing it. So yeah, maybe there's people who don't know I can play guitar. And before I sold out, I was pretty good. But other than that, the way I've been dressing, I mean, are pretty consistent, pretty solid. So, so here I am now going out speaking these hard truths. Now I want to focus on a certain type of person that doesn't like it when I do that. Kenosha is not the biggest town. So you collect people the same way that people who like follow me and hearing what I have to say. I've collected you per se. And so long as I keep saying things, um, let's see. Oh, Mr. Bird's here saying he's got the collections somewhere. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, the idea. Oh, hold up. I see what I'm messing up. I always forget to do this. Hold on. Let's see here. I think. Ah, give me a sec. I realize what's going on here. Public. Okay. Sorry, Facebook folks. I can now see your comments. I now made it public, so you can share it, put it out to people, stuff like that. Sorry about that. So let's see here. So Bird said he's probably got some of those recordings somewhere. So actually, that's a good segue. So maybe some people know things about you. And Bert, my boy Bert, he's like, Ray, I see you coming up in the YouTube world. I see people following your podcast. I got these recordings and you sucked on these recordings. If you don't want these recordings to see the light of day, stop talking what you're talking. You have 12 hours to confirm that you're going to stop your show or I release the recordings. So what I would say, and he wouldn't do that. That's my boy. I'm just making a joke here. But I would tell you if he was serious and if someone did that, I would say release the recordings. I wake up every day knowing the cost and the burden of speaking the truth. Release the recordings. If they're really me, then they're really me. Let's get her done. Release the recordings. Now, let's say he like uses some fancy computer and it's not actually me. And he goes, I have these fake recordings, but no one's going to know they're fake. They're going to believe that it's you. So don't speak the truth or speak the truth and I release the fakes and everyone's going to think that's you. My answer doesn't change. Release the recordings, even the fake ones. My attitude is I've been out in the public eye to a certain level and to a certain consistency that anyone who actually anyone who actually knows me, and then two, anyone who actually cares to get to know me, like actually cares, they're going to figure out the truth one way or the other. I don't have to speak it. The truth will stand. In business, business partners split. So I split with two business partners, maybe, this is 2020. So it must have been 5-6 years ago. To this day, these two business partners are running around hating on me. You will never hear me publicly speaking about them. Never. Why? It doesn't matter. We were three business partners that it broke down. It was actually them two on one side and me on the other. So it was them saying that I'm holding them down. I'm keeping them back. I'm preventing them from growing and being successful. And it was me saying the same exact thing to them. And I remember fighting back and forth. And I said, you know what? This is crazy. Let's find out who's telling the truth. So that's what I said to them. I said, maybe we're both telling the truth. And as we break off, you guys will do better and I will do better. Or one or both of us is lying. That's the little 4-box square there. We're both telling the truth. We're both lying. One of us is lying. So that's what I said to them 5 years ago. I'm going to tell you right now, where I was 5 years ago and where I am now, I wasn't lying. I saw one of them actually maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. I mean, how random is this? And I saw them because they were driving the same car and they had the hazard lights on. The car had like smoke coming out, the engine and everything. Something was going on with the car. And it wasn't raining or nothing. It was just a normal day, but the car, they pulled off to the side and it was here in town. And I was like wondering, like, is this God telling me, do I go over there and say, hey, do you need a ride? And I don't know. You might say I was wrong, but something in my head said the way that things were and how they broke, and they broke so bad, and the way that the world normally acts, they're not going to see me as being genuine. they're going to think that I'm coming over there to gloat or to point out how their life has gone a certain way versus mine. Because again, I don't follow them, but it's too small of a town. Someone will come up and just give me the gossip. You always got your gossipers around. So I don't have to go looking for it. I get the gossip. So it's like, they're not doing well. So I was like, I'm not going to get involved. But what I found is life is an endurance sport. You drag the timeline out long enough, the truth comes out one way or another. Again, it's another form of a discipline. It's a difficult thing, but the truth comes out. So this is all segueing for what I've been having lately as I've been talking out more. I've been getting people that are very hard right. I get the usual stuff, the death threats, for the racial stuff and everything like that. That's normal. But that's not people trying to shame you. That's people trying to scare you. So shaming you is a form of scaring you. So what I've been getting recently, it's actually a consortium of people that I've engaged with individually here in Kenosha. So two of the individuals, I've engaged with them on economics, where, that hard conservative, trickle down economics, just people that you see online talking with a high level of confidence because they're used to making other people feel small. So you have, I call them social media bullies. They can't actually fight themselves with debating, but they are better than most people and very aggressive. So these two are people that I just saw online, just telling a lot of lies to the public about economics. So, Trump has done this, Trump has done that. And I was kind of like, I actually love economics and statistics. Let's talk about it. So we got to a point where it was just so consistent that they were only used to superficial, I call it the Fox News level. The people who just memorized what Bill O'Reilly said when Bill O'Reilly was on the air, they'd repeat that back. The problem is Bill O'Reilly doesn't know statistics or economics either. So if you're engaging someone who knows this stuff, you can't go very far and you start looking weird. And what you start seeing is they first start talking off very articulate, like, well, the GDP has been raised over this, and then there's the minimum wage, and then employment is down for blacks. And after they run out of steam, it goes from that talk to starts talking about you directly. And the conversation is over when grown men start talking 100% in emoticons and memes. Don't get me wrong, I love memes. Memes are funny. But when you started out a debate regarding a subject and you were so far out of your element, you can't even use words anymore, that's when the conversation's done. So you just chalk it up, move on. So that's one group. Another group that you have is what I call the super patriots. And the super patriots are so super, they don't actually have to do anything patriotic. These are guys, again, that, I hate Colin Kaepernick because, he doesn't respect the American flag. These are the guys that you see wearing those shirts that always have like the eagle on it and the flag and everything. Those guys never served. Every now and then, some of them might have been Cold War supply guys stateside during the 80s. But once they caught whiff of the Gulf War, they made sure they got out. Those guys. All that tough talking, those guys who like buy a whole bunch of guns and they lay them out on their bed and look at them like that's not weird. Those guys. So I often have engaged those guys over time. Like, what they're, only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And I talk through how silly those things are. I talk through how, when you hear people talk that way, all they're letting you know is they have no clue what they're talking about because they've never gone anywhere and never done anything. The most they've done is watch Black Hawk Down 17 times. That's all they've done. So you burst that bubble, that falseness of such men. So you have that group. So you have the group pretending that they know economics and money and statistics, and they try to talk over the general public's head. And then you have these guys pretending that they're super tough guys, and they don't like minorities. They don't like Colin Kaepernick, not because they're minorities, but because they don't contribute to society. So I kind of throw a monkey wrench in that because I exist and I have served. And not only have I served, I then ask them, you talk a lot. Why didn't you serve? And then those are the kind of guys where it's like, oh no, I didn't serve, but my brother's daddy's uncle's cousin's best friend's nephew, he was a Delta Force operator. I call it wearing other men's crowns. You'll have mothers do it. You'll have sisters do it. Again, this is a very, very common thing on the far right or Trump Nation, where they haven't actually done anything themselves to contribute towards this nation. Their entire life has been dedicated towards themselves. And they try to shame people left of center. Oh, you commies, you just want. Why don't you contribute? It's a false notion that they assume that everybody left of center doesn't have a gun and has never served the military. Now, I'll give you a crazy stat here. For Wisconsin, the majority of your soldiers actually come from your city areas. So you have this notion. Brian Steele, one of our elected officials, he puts off this notion that a patriot of Wisconsin majoritively comes from these rural towns and these rural areas. It's not true. I actually put together some research that showed that the majority of the coffins that come back home, they go back to your most populated areas, your city areas. They go back to Milwaukee. So you find that there's, again, those lying notions that it's the country who takes care of this all alone. The rural area takes care of the country, when in reality, most of the people stepping up, they come to the city. And it makes sense when you think about it. When you're out in the rural area, sometimes you may just be in your own little world. When you're in the city, you have a lot of people, things going on. You're more connected to others. It makes more sense to go somewhere out there and help others. So, and then just straight population. Forget cultures. Just talk about the basic population. It makes sense that a larger place will have more people. So even when you adjust for per capita, though, the city's still overwhelmed. So I did the research for Wisconsin. It holds. That's how it is. So this is what I have going right now. I often make the joke about, I'll have young guys coming up to me and they want to learn business or they want to get into business. And I'll ask them, why did they decide to become a partnership? And they'll tell me a story about how as individuals, they can never get it together. So basically, as individual businessmen, they were trash. So their idea is, we were trash as individual businessmen. So instead of trying to become better individuals, we're just going to create this super team and become better businessmen. And I explained to them that that's not how it works. Wu-Tang, all those guys, they sold records individually too. Yeah, Wu-Tang albums, they sell. But when you break up RZA, GZA, Ghostface, they sell also. Method Man, those records also sell. If you take individual trash rappers and you put them all on stage together, all you have is a landfill. You don't make gold. So here's what I got right now. I got about 5 or 6 guys who individually, trash rappers. If you think about how I talk online, you can kind of think of it like freestyling, we're going to use some rap analogies here. Some people write all their lines before they go out. Me, I like freestyling. Sometimes people will write me on the side like, hey, I want to debate you. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, what's going to be the topic? I'm like, nah, son. Nah, this is what's going to happen. DJ's going to spin a beat. You get a couple seconds to listen to it. You put your bars, then I go. Or we can flip a coin. I go, I don't care. That's what we're going to do. We'll ask the public what they want to hear about. And when guys hear that, they're like, no. You go through my time feed all again. There's all these guys claiming that, you present yourself pretty well, Ray, but you don't actually know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, why don't you prove it? Prove that I don't know what I'm talking about. You can go home, study whatever you want to study, see how well you last with the conversation. So I'm a big fan of the freestyle conversation flow. So this group of guys, they have recently started a campaign. Now that they see there's more traction on this. First off, they're Trumpers. So that's the first thing. So not only are they Trumpers, but they're noticing, I'm not even going to describe it. They're noticing what we're doing. Whatever you want to call it, what we're doing right now, they're noticing it and they don't like it. They don't like the fact that we're information sharing. They don't like the fact that it's getting more consistent. It's starting to form. It's becoming something. It's getting bigger. We're connecting. We're engaging. So a campaign has started up. And this campaign, let's see if I can share my screen here. Give me a sec here. So this is the campaign. So this is the lead guy here, if you can see that. So a guy named Eris Artemis. So if you cover over the names here, Jay Pucci, one of the guys, got his feelings hurt really bad and, unfriended me or whatever. Dino Miletinovic, he's one of the lead guys here locally. Always running around with a cowboy hat, swears he's a big, tough patriot, but for some reason never found the local MEP station to sign up for the military. One of those awkward guys. Let's see here. Steven Simonovich, that's one of the guys I was telling you about when I was saying that, one of those economic talkers, but actually doesn't know the stuff. Big talker, but when it comes up to showing up, will never show up. So I got tagged on this today. He brought it before. So this is a print up. This is from a screen. It says, man charged with child abuse, Raymond Roberts, 35 of Kenosha, was charged Tuesday with 2 counts of child abuse. According to criminal complaints, Roberts' children, ages 7 and 9, returned to their mother's home after spending the weekend with their father, telling their mother he had struck them with a belt on each of the 3 days they were with him. According to criminal complaint, of police observed bruises, scratches, and red marks on the children's back and legs and shoulders. And this is just Roberts was released on signature bond. So basically, this is like an online report of how someone gets arrested and they get put out. So they've just been putting this out there. Oh, let me add the commentary. So I don't know what Facebook jail means. I think he means that maybe I got to Facebook jail or something. I don't know. YouTube sensation. Well, I'm not getting paid. I can only hope. Kenosha's lowlife goes at it again with me. A pathetic man. Get out of the public's eye. Now, that's the most honest thing that this guy wrote. Get out of the public's eye. And then he calls me a child molester. I don't know. Can anyone explain that? Is that the new thing now that everyone calls everyone they don't like a child molester? I'm actually seeing that on both sides of the fence now, where I'm seeing people on the left doing that. I'm seeing people on the right too. I maybe I'm out of the loop, but I'm noticing that now that everybody is calling everyone a child molester. All these, I don't know what that's about. Okay. Is that a QAnon thing or something like that? If somebody can help me out with that, yeah, give me some information. But I just noticed that, that comes up a lot. So I'm tying this here because you got to ask yourself this. One, if I am this person, why am I running out in public? That'd be pretty crazy. If you've done something so horrible and so heinous, it'd probably be good for you to kind of lay low and hide under a rock. Also on the flip side, why now? I'm 38. This is 3 years ago. So why bring it up now? What am I doing now that I wasn't doing before? So I will say this. They don't use the exact words, but I have never, I don't write about it a lot because, I usually write about it during Father's Day, things like that. I do share this. I work with a lot of men's groups, guys connecting with their kids and stuff like that. So I do talk about this pretty openly. But yes, I spanked my children, and then I was facing these charges. So that is absolutely true. I normally have this conversation in the context of the court system and how it works with custody battles, but I'm not going to sideline this too much. I don't want anyone to think this is about me crying and complaining about my custody battles with my ex. I'll just say this. I told my ex that I was getting married to my current wife. And even though we'd been co-parenting for 6 years at that moment, suddenly I was a dirtbag and I did spank my kids, and she called the police, and I had to go through this. So to this day, when I go for a job or a contract or anything, so just so those of you who don't know, even if you don't get convicted of a thing, if you were ever charged with it, it sticks with you the rest of your life. So every time because I'm a data scientist, I'm a contractor. Every time I get another job or every time I get another big promotion, I have to explain this. This comes up every single time. Hey Ray, did the background check. Can you explain yourself? And I will tell you this. I write the same 4 sentences that I just told you. When people ask me to explain myself, I say that me and my ex divorced in 2010, 2011. We co-parented, no issues, for 6 years. One night I told her that I'm marrying my current wife. And within 18 hours of telling her, she had called the police to say that I was a child abuser. That's all I write. That's literally all I write on every employment application. Because my attitude is this. The difference between a lie and a truth is one requires your participation. Some of these facts are pretty easy to verify. You can verify when I got a divorce. So that's an easy one to verify. You can verify the length of time between that divorce and this allegation. So you can verify, was it like 6 days after Ray got home and he had this crazy PTSD? Or, okay, Ray got home in 2010 and this happened 2015. Fall of 2000, or actually February 2015. You can verify those, or actually, yeah. So in 2016, actually, this happened. So this is pretty straightforward. Some of these things you can check. And that's really all I do. I leave it up to everyone to decide, does it make sense? If it makes sense to you, because let's be more direct. Just because I wasn't charged for this, just because I wasn't charged with child abuse doesn't mean I didn't do child abuse. We know that the court systems are not perfect. Maybe Ray got away with it. That's completely possible. Maybe I got away with it. I'm just such a smooth talker, just such a smooth guy. I got away with the deeds. You can go with that. I say, whatever makes sense to you, act accordingly. I remember when this first happened, I had a gentleman, again, online, engaging. He was actually in the public sphere politically at the time. And he got really frustrated. And we were talking just straight politics, like economics or something. And he goes, yeah, and that's why you beat your kids. And I said, again, I just continued with the economics, and he just kept doing it. And I said, the fact that that's what I went to. I said, so you care about children? And he's like, yeah, I care about children. I said, so You care about my children. Like, yeah, I care about your children too. That's why. And he kept saying things about me. So I asked him, I was like, well, so how are my kids doing? I'm in the middle of a custody battle. Haven't seen them. Have you checked in on them? How are they doing? Because he had feigned like he knew my ex-wife and she had told him directly and, such a bag. I'm like, well, how are they doing? I'm totally okay if there is half of Kenosha who thinks that I'm this bad guy or wants to believe it. I'm totally okay with that. And for that reason, they're like, oh, we're so glad that during that period of time he didn't have access to his kids. Are you guys taking care of my kids? Are you looking out for them? Or, just looking out for them. I don't mean like actually financially supporting them. I mean, like, are you just checking in on them? Because, hey, it takes a village. And every time I've said that, the people who speak never mention it again. Because what I found is they don't care about children. I'm not even going to get cheesy and say they don't care about my kids as much as I do. I'm saying they don't care about children. The children are a tool. They're a weapon. They're an object. No different than objectifying a woman. It was something used for their own personal means and ends. Once you put them in a place to say, hey, what are you going to do about the kids? They stop talking. I did a similar example the other day. So we had the shootings recently with the mass shooter. And I'm trying not to get too much into it, but there's conversation going around claiming that one of the guys that got shot by the 17-year-old was some kind of sex offender or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's false, but it's still going out. But it's floating in certain groups, and they're saying it over and over and over again. And I just have to keep wondering, it's like, if it's true, why do you have to keep saying it? Like, is it that you don't think people hear? It's like, what is the disconnect there? Why are you so adamant about it? So one of the guys, he's like, well, I just really hated anyone messing with women or children. And so my reply to him was, well, that's great. Me and my wife were pretty affiliated with local sex trafficking efforts from here to Milwaukee. And I brought up to him, I was like, hey, actually, we don't have enough men involved. If you go to a sex trafficking forum or anything regarding human trafficking or sex trafficking, you're going to go into a room. And if there's 100 people in that room, check me on this if you ever go to something. If there's 100 people in that room, no more than 20 are going to be men. No more than 15 are going to be men when you take away law enforcement. So if you have a community meeting, let's say the police say, we're going to have a community meeting on human trafficking, on sex trafficking. It's happening in your area, which, by the way, Kenosha is a hotbed. It's a hot pipeline for that. If you take away the police, who are basically, it's their job to be on this, and you just have the community, it's going to be overwhelmingly women. Now think about that. Who are the normal customers of people that are sex trafficked? Is it women? Who are the normal employers of people that are trafficked for labor, human trafficking? Is it women? Do women own most of the small businesses? What you see is the people who need to be there the most are not there. And social media is showing that same thing. The men who should be there the most for these items and for these situations, they're not there. And when you ask them to be there, they disappear on you. When they hear you talking about it, so I kind of skipped the part. When they hear you talking about it, they try to silence you. So if I'll tell you this right now, if you start going up and down the streets in Kenosha and start saying one of the fuels of human trafficking is pornography. Pornography is bad. Stop watching pornography. Stop buying pornography because it fuels sex trafficking. You're going to start getting men who don't like what you're saying. They are not going to like what you're saying. You're going to make them very uncomfortable when you start talking about pornography, they're going to try to shut you up. They're going to try to figure out a way to shut down your conversation. They need it to not be spoken. They need to not be covered. One of the ways to get them to stop trying to be a barrier to truth is whatever they claim is the truth, that lie. Ask them to come with you and support it. Because again, remember what I said, lies require your participation. So if a guy runs out and says he cares about women, he cares about children, and you say, great, we have a place for you. All he heard was, crap, I'm not trying to hold up this lie all day. I'm out. When you hear people say, all lives matter, great. Come help me with the homeless over here. They're not trying to hold that lie up. They don't think all lives matter. They're out. So, what up, Charmaine? So this is the consistent thing. When people tell you, you might have heard the one where someone's like, before we help any homeless, we should help the veterans. I don't know. Maybe you've heard this before. Before we help any of the homeless people or the people who don't want to work, why don't we take care of our veterans? That is not a person interested in helping veterans. That is a person trying to shame you, using veterans to get you to stop talking. They don't want to help veterans no more than they want to help the homeless. They just want you to stop talking because you're convicting them. So what they try to do is they try to shame you for not taking care of the patriots who bled for you. Now, again, as I said before, overwhelmingly, if you ask them if they served, it's going to be a no. I don't run into veterans who talk like that. I don't run into veterans who are sitting there saying, don't help poor people until you help me. I don't know what kind of veteran that would be. I mean, who is that? Maybe that's the guy who like goes into Applebee's for Veterans Day, and you know how they give you the free meal if you buy a drink, and that guy is just like milking those endless fries, like he brought his big purse. Maybe that guy. Maybe that guy who like he signed up and went into the military, but he dropped a box on his foot his first day in the army. So he's got a medical profile, so he gets a check every month. Maybe that guy would act that way and say, hey, this check isn't enough. I dropped a box on my foot. So until you, until you take care of me, don't be taking care of no poor people. Let's see what we got here. What about this one? Why don't we talk about black on black crime and response? Oh, yeah, I covered that earlier, but yeah, I was talking about if someone, they don't want you to talk about the subject at hand. Because for the record, we can talk about black on black crime. We can talk about black on black crime and how its numbers are comparatively close to white on white crime. I think 84%, 87% is simply about you people who do bad things normally don't play away games. Okay. So yeah, black dudes ain't driving out to the Hamptons, and the Melendez brothers, they ain't driving to the hood. That's just what it is. Crimes of opportunity. Most crimes are crimes of opportunity. But the point here is valid that there's a conversational topic and you're trying to come at something else. I was watching the Trump video, the video yesterday of Trump. Was that yesterday or the day before? Of Trump coming into town, and there's the guy there videotaping, a black guy, which, to be honest, I think he was inciting the Trump voters. I mean, he chose to go sit there in the sea of them and mess with them, but hey, free country, brother. So one of the guys who's for Trump, he's yelling at him. He goes, all black lives matter, including the babies. Now, basically what this guy is saying is abortion happens a lot in the black community. Now, 60% of all abortions in America are not are white. But his point is there's a high rate of abortion. Now, these are the same people. I have a little term for this. I call them part-time pro-lifers. Again, part-time pro-lifers. You have two kinds. You have a part-time pro-lifer, and you have a post part-time pro-lifer. A lot of P's there, a little onomatopoeia, pop, pop, pop. So again, part-time pro-lifers, a pre and a post. A pre part-time pro-lifer. This is somebody who cares so much about that little black baby until it's born. They feel for it. They talk about it online. They write those Facebook posts that say, I don't care who I offend. I just have to say it. And if you can't handle it, unfollow me. And then they start talking about black babies being aborted. They're the same people, though. As soon as that baby's born, I do not want to pay any more taxes for welfare, even though welfare is like a fraction of your taxes. That's all they talk about. I mean, honestly, if you want to talk about welfare out of your paycheck, you should talk about corporatism. But again, another conversation. So that's what I call a part-time pro-lifer. They care about that life up until it's born. Now there's another one. There's a post part-time pro-lifer. A post part-time pro-lifer is a person that doesn't care about that life until it's gone. There are people who don't look after their community members, their family members, their children. You ask them, I think there was a commercial back in the day. It was like, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? There's adults that don't know the answer to that question. And don't get me wrong, society has a lot of things to work on, but there's also a lot of personal responsibility at the individual level, at the family level, that is not occurring. So when you sitting there crying over that casket because that kid was running in the streets and he was one of those victims of gang violence, but he was in a gang. You never knew what he was up to. You never knew what he was doing. You knew it was no good. You knew sometimes he had money. You knew he didn't have no job. Now he's laying up in the church staring at the roof. Now you want to cry over that casket. You want to talk about how much he meant. That's post part-time pro-lifing. You didn't care about that life until that life was over. We have these two extremes. Let's see what you got here, Andrew. What about isms or generally diversions? People make moral arguments with people that don't know them because you can't prove they don't walk the walk in the moment of a conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Diversions, obfuscations. It's basically like taking a social smoke grenade or a discussion smoke grenade, poof, like the ninjas, and trying to pop smoke. Absolutely. Same thing I say about fathers. The dude going to jail for child support are the same kids you claim you were helping when they were young. You know, you want to come on here and explain that? Because I've heard you explain it before, but I think you do it better than I would. You trying to come on? Let's see if Charmaine wants to come on and break that down for you guys. Oh, before we go on to let me finish up the start part. We're going to keep going with this, but so my point is I wake up every day knowing that people are going to share truths about me and share falsehoods about me. Both. I argue that if what I speak is the truth, that's all that matters. I don't mean you have to dismiss or agree with me. I'm saying that uh, I'm putting that up. I asked Charmaine, is he coming on? So I say that at the end of the day, if I'm a fraud, and maybe that's a better way to say it, if I'm a fraud, community, let's find out today. if if I am claiming to be a thing that I'm not, and in reality I'm this dastardly dude, let's find out today. Meet up with me, find me, call me out, hold me up to the light. You don't need pants if your chest up on the camera. um, but that's my point. If you don't need me or anyone else telling you that we don't do drugs. You have the wherewithal, you have the ability, especially as a community. So maybe you only see 5 seconds of me, and maybe this other person only sees 5 seconds of me. But if this community continues to come in and close around each other, it will be harder for anyone, including me, to show you different faces. The worst days of my life as a child were always parent-teacher conferences. Because when I would go home on normal days, I'd be able to say whatever I needed to say to get my parents to leave me alone so I could go play video games. And when I went to school, I would say whatever I needed to say to my teacher to get them to get off my case about the fact that I didn't turn in any homework. But parent-teacher conference day, everybody's in the same room. That is very difficult. Nearly impossible to two-face your way out of that one. And believe me, I tried. Man, did I try. We need to start parent-teacher conferencing this community. So those guys, when they posted that thing, they're thinking that I'm going to like go hide or something or run. I started posting people who I think are influential people within the community. That's what I did. I was like, okay, who I'm just going to start thinking of people who know people. You know, some people just have that thing. They just know people. So I started tagging people like, okay, people that know people. Who is this guy? Because the main guy I've actually never seen face to face. I actually just had a buddy send me a picture. He's like, I think it's this guy because he had an older account. So he's got this fake account, you know, but yeah, community relation conferencing. So that's what I did. You know, we need to become a community that when someone's messing with one of us, we call each other, call everybody and be like, you know, sound the alarm. Sound the alarm. So that's what I did. And everyone's just kind of sitting me like, Ray, I don't know who this is. Ray, I don't know who this is. No one knows who it is. This guy's claiming that he's representing the community and that, you know, all this stuff. Who are you? I saw somebody else talking online, a gentleman I just made Facebook friends with recently, actually. So if I'm reading it right, he's actually Native American. Okay. And he was talking about Black Lives Matter. And what I saw was I mean, it looks like a black person. I mean, you look at the profile, a black woman saying that she lives here in Kenosha. She's an active community member, and she's basically telling him off and saying, before you say all this stuff, I need to see, you know. Oh, so let me back up. This is what she basically did. So she goes into this room. It's a very diverse room. And she starts saying how all white people are like the devil and everything, and how black people don't need white people. And she says, this room is so fake. All the white people who are real, come get at me. Like, she's basically saying, This is all crazy. We don't need white people. White people are the devil. All the black people who are really trying to do something, follow me because I'm a community leader. So the first thing I did when I saw that is I wrote out to that community, that diverse community. I never heard this woman in my life. I'm not claiming that if Ray don't know you, you don't exist in community in Kenosha. I'm not saying if Ray doesn't know you, that doesn't mean you're not black. I'm not trying to Joe Biden you guys. I'm just saying our community is not that big for someone to have the balls to stand up and say that. Someone should know you. So I said that for this other guy's benefit too, because I don't want him thinking for even a second that that's how the black community feels. I'm sure there's some individuals who feel that they can do everything on their own. We've talked about the Rambo types, the Rambo mentalities, but Rambo types don't last very long. Even if they survive the battle, the stress alone, they have short lifespans, very short lifespans. That is not the recommended way to go, in my opinion. I'm trying to actually, now I can't find it, but I'm trying to find exactly what that lady said. But I started asking him, like, who are you? And you know what? She stopped talking. As soon as I asked her, who are you? I said, I'll meet with you. I want to hear you talk for your next thing. She stopped talking. And that's when you realize these are just individuals who want to shut down other people speaking. They want to shut down community relating. They're basically Grinches. They're sitting there up there at the top of the hill hating on watching what. Just so you know, the name of the room this person was going off in is called Recovering Human Rights in Kenosha. Why do you even bother going into such a room just to stir up division, to stir up unrest? Why would you even bother to do that? What does that say about your heart? That you hear there's a group called Community Doing Community, and you're like, oh, I got to wreck that party. I got to shut that down. I argue there's a lot of people out there right now engaging with people whose hearts and spirits are not aligned to be engaging. If anything, when I go through social media, I think that's the strongest case for us taking mental health more serious. I'm seeing, in my opinion, a lot of hurt, confused people who clearly don't have the proper outlets to navigate their internal wounds. And the result of it is what spills out of their keyboards before they hit enter. There's people I don't like. And let me say that. There's people that when I knew them, I didn't like them. Because if I'm honest, if I haven't seen you or talked to you in 5 or 6 years, I don't actually really know you anymore. I know I'm not the same person I was when I came home from the army. So if I wouldn't appreciate someone claiming that I haven't changed in 10 years, why should I be so callous or casual? Why should I be so casual and assuming that you're the same person? So if I haven't seen you in a long time, I don't know you. There's people that I'm like, you know what? When I knew them, I didn't like them, but I'm seeing them doing good things. There's a question. Would you agree that the black community has a high rate of mental health due to conditions they live in? Short answer, man, I'm not qualified to answer that. It's not my area. I mean, if you're asking me to hypothesize, if you said, do I think, it makes sense to me. I mean, PTSD is PTSD. Yes, me and you are Army veterans. But, someone being in a nasty car accident, they can have post-traumatic stress disorder as well. So, um, it's something that I would believe in, but I haven't done any research on it personally if it's a something evidence supported and evidence based, but it makes sense to me. The same way poverty. I would say poverty has a high rate of mental health due to conditions. So being black, being poor, I think all these factors, it would make sense to me, I guess is what I'm saying. But no, I haven't studied on it, sir. I genuinely believe that Americans are the most sensitive of people. Well, here's my, sit down, kids. Grandpa's going to tell you another analogy story. So I don't grow stuff, but I remember talking to a guy who grows stuff. He told me that if you bring, so he specialized in like doing indoor grow setups. So he said if you bring in some tomato plants, what they found was when they first started doing these indoor lighting systems and everything, they would have the lights on 24 hours a day. And what they found was these plants would grow tall and everything. They'd feed them every day, but they were very weak. Their generations would get weaker and weaker. So fast forward today, like the proper indoor grow houses, what they actually do now, the lights are only on half the day. And they actually have these big fans that push on the plants to mimic the wind. What they found is if the plants don't have enough stress, over time they become weaker and weaker and weaker. This is a great country and we should love the benefits, but if we don't have proper stress on us, like we're very sedentary creatures as a culture. So if someone's out there that just finished an 18-mile run, I'm not talking about you. Calm down. Collectively as a culture, we're very sedentary. That makes us more sensitive to things. It doesn't make us stronger. I'll tell you another quick army story. So we had these big generators. They're like the size of box cars, that you see on the train. Huge generators. You're on the side of a mountain. They drop off this thing here, and we kept destroying them. We didn't know what we were doing, but we kept destroying these things. Finally, they sent us out a generator mechanic. And what we found out was the reason why we were blowing out these things inside of weeks is because, actually less than weeks, days. We were destroying these things in days. What we found out was if they're not under a certain amount of load, about 30%, it has too little load, they burn out themselves. So we had to make things that consumed electricity. So that's what we did. We ran lights to the locals just to get up to past that 30%. And it was goodwill as well. But we didn't know that you have to have a certain amount of load or you blow these things out. I argue there's a similarity between the story about those big generators, the tomato plants, and we as a people. It might be comfortable on the front side, but we make things so hard on ourselves long term when we don't put ourselves through proper stresses. Conflict in itself is not a bad thing. In fact, I dare say conflict is necessary for a proper life. And it's not just me saying that. There's, think about you being a parent. If you're always taking care of your kids and doing their work for them, that's not a good thing for them. It really isn't. Let's see what I got next here. So, with the logic of a cop house, would a crisis house in the community maybe help? I think it's something to throw on the board. I think you'd have to have the proper types of people running it, of course. I mean, with community help as well. But coming back to the parent teacher conferences, if you have a place for the community to all get in the same room, it's kind of hard for mischievous people like the child that I was, kind of hard for the mischievous people to wreak havoc and to divide and play us against each other. Is having that common place of who's who. Now, the people choose to opt out, they choose to opt out. But for the community that chooses to engage, they have that ability. I think there's something to that there. I'm seeing a lot of good things happening right now. I did look it up. It's Rahm Emanuel, actually. I've been saying it lately, but it's Rahm Emanuel. Never waste a good crisis, is what he said. Never waste a good crisis. We've had a crisis, and I'm seeing people capitalize on it. I'm seeing people take this opportunity to meet their neighbors. I'm seeing people take the opportunity to engage their neighbors, to work with their neighbors, to shake hands that maybe they knew they should have shook hands years back, but for whatever reason you didn't. I'm seeing people take that advantage now. Taking a while for Charmaine to put on pants. Well, he's got to do the shimmy now. He's getting a little soft. That's probably what it is. You'll have these moments in your life that maybe are not that memorable for you, but they're definitely memorable for somebody else. So I've been asking, who is this guy, Eris? Someone finally sent me a picture. I think I remember this guy from like a decade ago or something. I think I saw him once. Like, I don't remember the conversation. But for you, I'm going to date myself now. There was a movie, Grosse Pointe Blank. And I think it's David Caruso. Is that his name? No, John Cusack. John Cusack. Basically, he's going back to his high school reunion and to kind of get away from his work. His work is he's a hitman. So he takes a little time and he's going back to his high school reunion, and there's this guy from his high school years. I think it's like his 20-year reunion or something. And this guy's carrying a grudge from high school. And so the whole movie, they have like this weird, tension between them. So then finally at the end, it looks like they're about to fight or something because this guy doesn't know that he's a hitman. So John Cusack, right before they start getting close to fight, he goes, "Do you think there's something between us?" And that's what he leads with. He goes, "Do you think there's something between us?" He's basically asking, do you think I've been thinking about you the last 20 years of my life? And the guy kind of like breaks down and gets a little weird with him and everything. And then he starts hugging him and everything. And you will have people that carry things and they have led themselves, you're carrying it with them. And they'll be very shocked to learn that they were carrying it by themselves. You have to keep moving forward in life. You have to keep fighting the good fight, doing what you can do. You're going to make mistakes, You're going to get fired from a job because you made a mistake. I had a buddy who he made a mistake. He admitted he made a mistake. He got fired from a job. I know it was really, for a little while, it was kind of getting him down. But that's what we tried to share with him, that, man, you're human. You made a mistake. But this is not the end of your life. It's a job. Get another job, move forward, learn from the mistake. It's don't dwell, don't carry it. Do what you got to do. Take your guilt. So whatever the guilt is, take that. But don't be convinced that there's any shame. You as a person are not less, you are not less worthy. You are still a human being. You still have a value. Same value you had before you made your mistake. This Saturday, I am facilitating some training for how to have uh, facilitating discourse on race relations. That's the subject. That's the topic. And this is going to be very unique because, again, it's training people to have being the lead of a facilitation on race. But this will be the first time that I'm trying to teach people how to do this who are not minorities. So overwhelmingly, the class is going to be white individuals. And I've been talking to myself a lot about this. I've been talking to some of my other peers and people who do this kind of thing. And here's my reasoning for attempting this. The African American population is 13% of the population. I don't think we can get out of this if we're the only ones who can possibly be facilitators in a discussion. We need to get to a point where anyone who cares about this community can facilitate this very necessary discussion, facilitate any necessary discussion. We need to get to that point. We need to stop saying that the only people who can talk about race are people of color. We need to stop saying the only people who can lead a conversation about police brutality to African Americans is African Americans. I say that's the problem. The problem is for so many years, for so many decades, blacks were the only people talking about it. That was the problem. They were the only ones talking about it. Will Smith said racism hasn't changed. It's just being filmed. So before it was being filmed, those communities were the only ones talking about it. It was always, they said he had a gun. Now we have video. You know, information flies so fast now online. So now we're hearing about people like Katherine Johnson, a 92-year-old grandmother, 2006. Bad shoot, knock on the wrong house. They're planting drugs on her after they kill her. We're now seeing how these stories where, yeah, if you didn't have that before, like looked very isolated, but now we're seeing how it combines. If we can find a way to create a framework for conversation that anyone who wants to facilitate, we can teach them how to facilitate. And then more importantly, anyone and everyone who wants to go through these engagements publicly can go, whether you show up in person or through Skype or Zoom, whatever your level of comfort is. Just getting some of these conversations engaged. I notice I didn't say done. I don't know if there's ever a done. Just engaging some of these conversations. I really think that's a new thing. Societal problems, when you bury them, they don't die. They just start stinking. We did that with a lot of things. We buried things that didn't die. They just stink. Let's go through the ugly interaction of digging these things up and, and let's figure out what we got here. Let's see what you got here, Andrew. I think another reason that conversation about race isn't facilitated by white people is because people confuse lectures for dialogue. And when people are being lectured, they want to be lectured by experts or people with more understanding. I agree. So the test will be, can we make it a true facilitation about how to think through things? So, not someone standing up and saying, you don't know what it's like to be me. That's a declaration. Lectures are declarations. How about questions? Even dialogue, sometimes it could be um, too steering. That's what I want to say. It can be too steering to where if I'm running the facilitation, but I'm asking all the questions, it might feel like a dialogue, but really it's a steering. How about a structure, a framework of questions that are more asking how you see things and what do you think, and analyzing how you think through things. So I'll just give you some highlights of the training that I provide. The first part of it is when I am talking, it's a little monologue. It's what I call 80% of the questions about Black Lives Matter. So I'm normally giving this facilitation to, it can be, an older church group. So all white, 65 years old, conservative, so I go through the 80% of questions. Are we communists? Who's our leader? That's a big question. Who's our leader? I go through these questions. And then once it's done, it's like, that's 80%. I'm sure you got more, but it covers. And you can look at their face like, yep, he just covered 80% of our questions. I then ask after that, is there anything that I missed? But I know there's things I missed. So, one I don't put on the list on purpose. People will say, well, Ray, will you here and now renounce violence? Or what about the BLM groups? Ray, I see how you present yourself. You're cool, calm, and collected. But what about the groups that they seem to be okay with violence? Well, are you against them? Will you speak against them? And usually my answer is something to the effect of, I will speak against violence the moment America speaks against violence. The moment that America pulls back every soldier to the United States and says that we will no longer build this nation off violence, I will go national and tell BLM, hey, even though I'm not your boss, America just set the example. Let's follow it. So if you think about what I'm doing there, I'm pointing out the fact that you're asking other people to do things for success a different way than you did it. And this happens a lot with marginalized groups. A different set of rules, a different path than the path that we've taken. So I always try to finish these up because I don't think Charmaine's going to make it. I always try to finish these up with a next steps. So this Sunday, we're having an event out at Lincoln Park. I was asked to do a remote podcast out there. So I'm going to be out there with the booth. There will be a mic set up for any and all who wants to come out and talk with me, sit there and have a rap session with me. I say that's the next step. Let's start closing this circle here and let's start getting to know each other. Send this out far and wide to anyone and everyone that you know. I think that's the next step for us. And then maybe we have a conversation about our crisis house in the community. So I think that's pretty good. We're coming up on midnight, everyone. Enjoy your night.